Welcome back to the Naughty by Novel podcast. We are so excited to talk to you today. You know we love to unpack those steamy, addictive relationships in the books that have everyone buzzing, right?
Right.
So today we're going full throttle into a world of dragons and danger and some seriously intense attractions. We're deep diving into Fourth Wing,
Bing.
the first book of Rebecca Yaros's Empyrean series.
Yes. And I think what is fascinating about Fourth Wing is how the author sets up this world Navarre, where dragon riders are like the ultimate protectors.
The elite.
Yes. They're trained at this brutal academy at Bazareth War College. And it's not just about like the fire and flight. The bonds these riders form are forged in blood, sweat, and some seriously charged encounters.
Exactly. And you see that play out right from the start with our main characters, Violet and Xaden. So we've got Violet, petite, bookish young woman who'd rather be a scribe. But her mother, the formidable General Sorengale, basically forces her into the Rider's Quadrant.
Yeah. You immediately feel for Violet. I mean, she's underestimated by everyone because of her size and her background. And suddenly she's thrust into this incredibly demanding world, surrounded by, these larger-than-life dragon riders.
Right.
And then there's Xaden Riorson, the brooding, mysterious top rider at the academy.
Oh, yeah. And the Exit's got his own baggage, right? He's the son of the Great Betrayer. Carries the weight of that legacy everywhere he goes. Plus, there's the mystery of those 107 scars on his back.
Yes.
Yaros keeps dropping these hints, but never fully reveals their origin in this first book.
Right.
It's like, come on.
It's like she's dangling a carrot. Keep reading to find out.
Exactly.
It's brilliant. That slow burn mystery. It's a classic romance trope. It creates this delicious tension and anticipation, making you crave those moments when Violet and Xaden's connection finally starts to crackle.
And crackle it does.
Yeah.
And speaking of slow burn, for those unfamiliar with the term, it basically means the romantic and sexual tension builds gradually. It's all about the delayed gratification, those stolen glances, the simmering emotions
Yes.
that make the payoff that much more satisfying.
You got it.
And boy, is the payoff worth it. Their first sexual encounter happens after this brutal War Games battle. It's like all their pent-up emotions just explode. I was definitely fanning myself during that scene.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that because it's not just a purely physical release for them. It comes at this point where they've both faced incredible danger and are emotionally raw. They've seen each other at their most vulnerable. And that shared experience deepens their connection in a way that, like, just a physical...
It changes everything.
Yes.
It complicates things, too, right?
Yeah.
Because Xaden eventually declares his love for Violet, but he's clearly hiding something big. We find out he's involved in this Broden rebellion.
Nice.
So you know there's going to be some serious challenges ahead for their relationship. It's like just when things start to heat up.
Right. And you've got to wonder how much of Xaden's initial resistance to Violet was genuine. Was it just his past and feeling unworthy? Or was he actually trying to protect her from the danger that he's tangled up in?
Okay, so before we get too deep into the rebellion, we have to talk about the dragons.
Oh, yes.
The dragon rider bonds in this book
So important.
are so much more than just flying and fighting.
Yes.
They manifest these unique magical abilities called signets, which are basically extensions of the rider's personality.
And inner strength.
Their inner strength, exactly.
Yeah, it's like the dragons amplify everything about their riders, including their desires, vulnerabilities, and it adds a whole other layer to the romantic tension. For instance, Violet bonds with not one, but two dragons.
What?
Tairn, this powerful black dragon, and Darna, a rare golden feather tail who can stop time.
Whoa, time stopping. That's a new one. Talk about defying expectations. She's this like little slip of a thing with this incredible power and strength.
Yeah.
It's no wonder Xaden is drawn to her.
Absolutely. It challenges his perceptions and forces him to see her as more than just the general's daughter or someone who needs protecting.
Exactly. And her dual bonds with these very different dragons suggests a complexity to her character that we only see glimpses of in this first book.
Right.
Which I think makes you want to know how those bonds will evolve and what other powers she might develop as the series progresses.
Totally.
I do. And what about how these dragon bonds affect their intimate moments? Like, is there anything... I feel like there's this underlying current of dragon magic that seems to heighten everything. It's like the danger and the magic of their world feed directly into their passion.
You can feel that intensity in their interactions. It's not just about the physical attraction, though Xaden certainly gives off that, like, bad boy vibe.
Okay.
But underneath that, you sense this vulnerability, this struggle with his past. It's like he's drawn to Violet's light, but terrified of what his darkness might do to her.
Speaking of darkness,
Ooh.
I have to say I was a little disappointed with some of the villains in this book. The Venin, those creepy magic-sucking creatures, are a formidable threat, but some of the human antagonists felt a bit one-dimensional.
I agree. Characters like Jack and Orin, who make Violet's life at the Academy miserable, come across as mean just for the sake of being mean. You don't really get a sense of why they're so nasty, what motivates their actions. They're like obstacles for Violet to overcome, but they don't really challenge her on like a deeper level.
Exactly. It's like they're just there to create drama and give Violet more reasons to rely on Satan's protection. It would have been so much more interesting if their motivations were more complex, if they presented a real moral dilemma for Violet.
Right. Like, what if one of them genuinely believed they were doing the right thing, you know?
Right.
Or if they were being manipulated by, like, a more powerful force.
Yeah.
That would have added some much-needed nuance to the conflict.
Nuance is always good. And speaking of missed opportunities, let's talk about Dane, Violet's childhood friend who's also in the writer's quadrant. He felt so flat to me.
Yeah.
Like he's just there.
Yeah.
He doesn't really add anything to the story. And his attraction to Violet feels very forced and unconvincing.
I see what you mean. Compared to the crackling chemistry between Violet and Xaden, any other potential love interest would have a tough time standing out. But maybe that's the point. Maybe Dane's blandness is meant to highlight how extraordinary Violet and Xaden's connection is.
That's an interesting thought. Maybe Dean's purpose is to show that Violet isn't settling for a safe, predictable relationship. She's willing to risk everything for a love that's passionate and all-consuming, even if it comes with a whole dragon's hoard of baggage.
And that brings us to a supporting character who does stand out, Rhiannon. Yaros drops hints about Rhiannon's bisexuality and her attraction to Violet.
Yes.
Adding a whole other layer of intrigue to the social dynamics at the Academy.
I loved that element. I thought it would have been so easy for Yaros to fall into the trap of a typical love triangle.
Right.
But Rhiannon's character suggests something much more complex and interesting. It makes you wonder if there's a possibility for something to develop between them, especially given the intense bonds that form between writers at the Academy.
It definitely adds an element of will they, won't they to their interactions, and it also highlights the pressure and scrutiny these young writers face in such a rigid, hierarchical society.
Right. And I have to say, Rhiannon is one of the few characters who seems to see through Xaden's facade. She questions his motives and doesn't hesitate to challenge him. It makes their interactions crackle with a different kind of tension, one that's less about romantic attraction and more about a clash of personalities and ideologies.
I love that dynamic. It makes Rhiannon more than just a potential rival for Violet's affections.
Exactly.
She's a complex character in her own right, someone who's not afraid to speak her mind and stand up for what she believes in.
And her relationship with Violet, even if it doesn't become explicitly romantic, has the potential to be incredibly powerful. Like they could become allies, confidants, maybe even something more.
It's definitely something to keep an eye on as the series progresses. And speaking of things to keep an eye on, there's that bombshell Yaros drops at the end of Fourth Wing. Remember Violet's brother Brennan, who is presumed dead?
Okay.
Turns out he's not so dead after all.
Oh.
Not only is Brennan alive and kicking, but he's also part of the rebellion Xaden's involved in.
Oh, no.
Talk about a cliffhanger. I know, right? It blew my mind. Suddenly, all those secrets Xaden's been keeping, the mysterious disappearances, the whispered conversations, they all take on a whole new meaning.
Yeah.
It's like the rug was pulled out from under us.
It really is. And Violet is thrust into this world of intrigue and rebellion with her own family at the heart of it. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about Axon, his motivations, his feelings for Violet. Was he using her all along? Or is there something more to his story than we realize?
Right. There's so many questions.
I know. And what about Violet's mother, the General? How will she react to her children's involvement in a rebellion against the very system she upholds? It's a powder keg of possibilities.
It really makes you think about the different forms of attraction and loyalty at play here. You have the intense, passionate connection between Violet and Xaden, but then there's the deep, familial love between Violet and Brennan, and the complex, often strained relationship she has with her mother.
And how those different types of bonds will be tested as the rebellion unfolds. It's not just about romantic love anymore.
Right.
It's about family duty and the fate of an entire kingdom.
Exactly. And with Violet's emerging power, her ability to wield lightning and those dual dragon bonds, she becomes a key player in this conflict.
Yeah.
But the question is, which side will she choose? Will she follow her heart, even if it means betraying her family and everything she's been taught to believe in?
Or will she prioritize duty and loyalty, even if it means sacrificing her own happiness?
That's the tough question.
And what about those 107 scars on Xaden's back? We still don't know who inflicted them or what kind of deal he made to earn them.
Right.
Clearly, his past is deeply intertwined with this rebellion, but the details remain shrouded in mystery.
It's like those scars are a physical manifestation of his secrets, a constant reminder of the pain he's endured and the sacrifices he's made. And the fact that he keeps them hidden from Violet suggests a level of shame or guilt that he hasn't quite come to terms with yet.
And it makes those intimate moments between them even more fraught with tension. You can feel his hesitation, his fear of revealing too much, of pushing her away. It adds a layer of vulnerability to his character that makes him even more appealing despite his brooding bad boy persona.
You can't help but wonder if he's holding back because he truly cares for Violet and doesn't want to drag her into this dangerous world, or if he's just afraid of what she'll think of him once she knows the truth.
The revelation about Brennan changes everything. It's like Violet's caught between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, you have Xaden, this incredibly powerful, mysterious, and attractive man who's declared his love for her, but who's also keeping secrets and leading a rebellion. On the other, you have her brother, who she thought was dead, who's now part of this same rebellion, and who might hold the key to understanding Xaden's past.
It's like a classic case of star-crossed lovers, but with dragons and a rebellion thrown in for good measure.
I love that analogy. And, you know, despite some of the weaknesses we talked about earlier, like those underdeveloped villains and the whole Dane situation, Fourth Wing, really delivers on that primal attraction, that forbidden love that's so irresistible in romance novels.
It taps into those deep-seated desires for adventure, danger, and a love that's worth fighting for, even when the world seems determined to tear you apart. It's a classic fantasy trope, but Yarros elevates it with her compelling characters and that heart-stopping romance between Violet and Xaden.
And you can't forget about the dragons. They're not just pets or transportation.
Right.
They're extensions of the writers themselves, reflections of their deepest desires and fears.
Right, and that connection between writer and dragon, the way their powers and personalities are intertwined, adds a whole other layer to the romantic and sexual tension in this story.
It's like the dragons themselves are invested in their writers' relationships. And with Violet bonded to two dragons, each with its own unique personality and powers, it makes you wonder how those relationships will influence her choices as the series progresses.
Will Terran's fiery nature push her toward embracing her own power and taking risks? Will Undonna's calming presence encourage her to seek peace and understanding? Or will she find a balance between the two, forging her own path?
And what about Xaden's dragon's Gale? He's described as this powerful, almost menacing creature. Does his presence reflect Xaden's inner turmoil, the darkness he's trying to keep hidden?
It's an intriguing thought. It's almost as if the dragons themselves are metaphors for the character's internal struggles. And with the Venin, those ancient creatures who feed off magic posing a constant threat, the stakes are even higher.
Yeah.
It's not just a personal conflict anymore. It's about the survival of their world, the fate of everyone they love.
And with Violet's unique abilities, her lightning and her dual dragon bonds, she might be the only one who can stop them. But at what cost? Will she have to sacrifice her love for Xaden, her loyalty to her family, maybe even her own humanity to save Navarre?
That's the question that lingers as we close this first chapter, Fourth Wing. Is a thrilling ride full of twists and turns, scorching romance, and those heart-stopping moments that make you want to stay up all night reading. But it's also a story that leaves you with a sense of unease, of a storm brewing on the horizon. And as much as we enjoyed the steamy scenes and the dragon-fueled battles, it's the unanswered questions, the lingering mysteries that have us craving the next book in the series.
It's like Yarros has given us a taste of something truly extraordinary, a world where love and magic collide, where dragons soar and destinies are forged in fire. But she's also left us with a million questions, a desperate need to know what happens next.
And that, my friend, is the mark of a truly captivating story.
Okay, so let's break this down. We've got this incredible world, right?
Right.
With these complex characters, a rebellion is brewing. And ancient magic-eating creatures lurking in the shadows. But at the heart of it all,
At the heart.
is this fiery, forbidden romance between Violet and Xaden. So what does all of this mean for their relationship moving forward?
Well, it's really a classic case of star-crossed lovers, but with dragons.
Of course, gotta have the dragon.
And political intrigue just amped up to 11, and you really see Violet torn between her loyalty to family and this intense love that she has for Xaden, who represents everything her mother has taught her to distrust.
Yeah, it's like her head and her heart are at war.
Yes. And then, with the revelation that Brennan is alive and a part of the rebellion, the lines get even blurrier.
And then there's Xaden, burdened by his past, those mysterious scars, the weight of this rebellion on his shoulders. He has some tough choices to make. Can he really protect Violet while fighting for a cause that could very well tear them apart?
It's a question that keeps you hooked. Is their love strong enough to weather these storms? Or will the secrets, the betrayals, ultimately drive them apart? And let's not forget Violet's own emerging power.
Right. She's literally a walking weapon capable of wielding lightning. That kind of power can be both a blessing and a curse. We've seen how it makes her a target, but it also makes her incredibly valuable to both sides of this conflict.
Absolutely. And it raises these questions about control and responsibility. Will Violet be able to harness her powers for good? Or will she become a pawn in this larger game of power and rebellion?
And how will her powers affect her relationship with Xaden? I mean, will she need his protection? Or will she become the protector? The power dynamics between them are already so complex, and her growing strength adds like a whole other layer of intrigue.
Definitely.
And then what about the Veneen? I mean, they're still out there posing a threat to everyone in Navarre. It seems like Violet's lightning might be the key to defeating them, but at what cost?
It sets up this epic showdown, this clash between light and darkness. And while Fourth Wing definitely delivers on the action and the romance, it leaves you with this sense of unease, a feeling that the stakes are about to get even higher.
It makes you wonder if their love is strong enough to not only survive the rebellion, but also the threat of these ancient magic-devouring creatures. Fourth Wing is so much more than just this steamy dragon rider romance. It's a story about finding strength in adversity, facing your fears, and fighting for love when the world seems determined to tear you apart.
And that's what makes this book and this deep dive so captivating. It's got action, intrigue, and characters you can't help but root for, even when they're making questionable choices.
It's a story that reminds you, even in the darkest of times, hope can ignite, and love can be the spark that sets everything ablaze. So, if you were in Violet's shoes, facing impossible choices, and a love that could cost you everything, what would you do? Would you fight for your heart or sacrifice it for the greater good? That's something to ponder as you dive into Fourth Wing. And be sure to let us know your thoughts and theories on social media. We can't wait to hear what you think. Until next time, keep it naughty, keep it bookish, and keep those dragon fires burning.